I'll just interject here for you families that are joining us. Welcome. We're going to pause for a little bit to let guests join into this space, and we'll get started in just a few moments. But please give us a little bit of grace so that we can let everyone start where we're starting, and make yourselves comfortable where you are, and we're going to have a wonderful session for you today. Thank you. And while I'm on that topic, and I'll reiterate this when we get started, we're going to try to have all the questions and comments posted into the Q&A rather than the chat. If you all don't mind, that would be, we've figured out how we're going to better respond to the audience questions, and we think it'd be better if we can post them all into the Q&A rather than in the chat box. So thank you very much for that in advance. Everyone, we're going to get started. We just want to let the audience, enough people be able to join us before we get started in earnest. We can already tell that some people are posting their questions in the Q&A button, chat, not chat, but the Q&A section. So do post your questions there. We already see that some are coming through, but we're going to wait just a few moments to let others join us before we get started in earnest. Thank you. All right, I think it's about time to start so that we can make good use of your time. I am going to introduce myself. My name is Peter Osgood, and I am taking on the role of kind of MC at the start of this program. I'm the Director of Admission at Harvey Mudd College, and we're really excited to meet you all virtually and to help answer your questions. Several of the questions that have percolated up already are questions that we have every intention to cover in our presentation, and some we'll get to more in chat. But with that, I think each of our presenters should introduce themselves. And so I'm going to mute for a second, and I think Doreen should go first, going in sort of founding chronological.
Awesome. Thank you, Peter. Hello, everyone. Excited to be here. My name is Doreen Toda. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm one of the assistant deans of admissions at Pomona College. And I'm going to be handing it over to Scripps.
Hi there, my name is Kyla Fisher. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm an admission counselor at Scripps, as well as a graduate from the class of 2021. So happy to answer questions, mostly from the admission side, but also from student side if relevant. And I'll pass it on over to CMC.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie. I'm an assistant dean of admission here at Claremont McKenna College, and my pronouns are she, her, ella. And I will pass it on to Peter again.
Well, I'm Peter. You'll hear from me plenty, so I'll just pass it on to Aaron. Are you going to be the speaker for Pitzer?
Yeah, I am. Thanks, Peter, getting his time in the limelight. Hi, everybody. My name is Erin Griffin. She, her, hers pronouns. I'm an associate director of admission at Pitzer, and I've been here for about 7 years. But one of my colleagues, Sydney, who's a recent grad, will be on the chat box, so also answering questions from a student perspective. Welcome.
All right, so with introductions already concluded, we're going to move to the next slide and tell you a little bit what we have planned for you. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the Claremont Consortium more broadly, what we have in common, what we share in terms of resources. After I finish my comments, we're going to have each college representative speak about their own institution for a few minutes. And so you'll be able to hopefully discern some of the differences between the separate institutions, and they are notable ones. And then we're going to proceed with a little bit of information about admission and financial aid, what we do similarly and how we differ in our respective processes. And then it'll be up to you to just answer the questions that come up. So on to the next slide. And the first thing I want to tell you is about what we do in common. And so you can read this slide. I'm not going to repeat it to you, but I'm going to try and give you a little bit more sense of why this is important. Aside from being in small classes, where you're going to get the attention of faculty, all the instruction is going to be from professors. We don't hire graduate students and postdocs to do the instruction. It's not just questions, but our faculty have chosen to work here because they can be mentors to you. They can provide opportunities for you to get involved in internships and research programs, things like that, to identify when you're not at your best and provide resources for you. They pay attention to you. And that's particularly important. It's also the case that there's a shared experience about everyone being in a residential environment and going in kind of a similar experience, in the sense that you're part of this community and you feel like you're in a place of belonging. And we all work very hard to establish that at our schools. And yet, I'm going to use the metaphor or analogy of an accordion. You can stretch it and go to another college. And as you'll see in a map on the next slide, it's really easy to, or maybe another slide later on, let's leave it here. It's very easy to make connections across these colleges because the colleges are literally contiguous. What separates my campus at Harvey Mudd from Aaron's at Pitzer is a large rock and a bush. So it's really, really easy to get from one place to the next. For those of you from far away, we're in Southern California. You can see some of the highlights here. We can be outdoors most of the time. We make use of that. The natural environment is wonderful to have access to. It's also great to be near a metropolitan center. So that brings with it a lot of industry and opportunities for internships. It brings with it all kinds of entertainment. It brings with it all kinds of different cultures. Los Angeles area is a very diverse place culturally and ethnically. And what comes along with that is really great food. And I can absolutely swear by that. You can see there are various entry points here by airplanes. We're also about 40 minutes away from the world's biggest human trap built by a mouse. So that's Disneyland. So there's all these things that you can do. When we go to the next slide, you can see that these colleges are absolutely adjacent. So within the whole group of colleges, first of all, there are 7 schools, although you see in this map 5, because I actually kind of grayed out, you can see that there's Claremont Graduate University, and that is one of the 2 graduate schools in the group. They are in a kind of different place in their experiences than you would be. So we're going to talk in this presentation merely about the 5 undergraduate colleges that you can see here. Each of these colleges has its own dynamic, its own, if I can ascribe this to a college, personality. And that personality connects to the social movements in this country at the time of that college's founding. And so that impulse resonates through each of these colleges. So the conversations, what students feel and faculty feel are important, are going to be affected by that. It also affects how teaching, how faculty might approach certain courses that could be offered maybe across each of the colleges, but taught from a different perspective. So this adds a lot of diversity, plus it adds a lot of depth to the academic experience. So if we go to the next slide, you can see that we are all also undergraduate, residential, liberal arts colleges. So the way we each employ a liberal arts education will vary a little bit from school to school, but we all embrace it. And I think liberal arts is something that is kind of poorly understood because some people associate it to being a set of courses that a student would take. I think that's a cheap way of describing it, being biased. We want students to understand things broadly. We want them to see connections between disciplines. There's a lot of discussion-oriented courses, a lot of seminars. We want to have classes to be organized so that students focus and strengthen their communication skills, orally and written skills. We want them to appreciate arts for their own beauty. We want them to understand the scientific method of inquiry. We want them to understand how social structures are built, at least in academia, to understand social phenomena. All these things are incorporated into the education, and most of all, we're trying to produce lifelong learners. And that is at the heart of a liberal arts education. So, do we have support for the arts? You're darn tootin' we do. And it's any kind of music organization is open audition, 2 orchestras, 9 a cappella groups, all kinds of arts expressions available for you. We have science done in different ways at different institutions, and so there's a lot of outlets there. The social sciences are a part of all of our schools' education, but some focus on certain branches a bit more than others, and we'll talk about that in a bit. What we also have in common is that we all care deeply about supporting our students, and the advising systems are tightly networked. So in going across these colleges, if you can go from one college to the next, why would you do that? There's some really cool people at the other college. You could make some great friends. They may have interests in common with you. They may have new interests that you've not explored yet, but want to. Great opportunity. You can eat meals at the other colleges. There's an app for your phone that tells you what's going on at each of the dining halls. So, and here's a hint, at Harvey Mudd, we have 900 students, but we serve 1,300 lunches. So that's a hint. You can take classes across the colleges. I saw that was already posted as a question. Yes, you can. I dare say you will do this. So the courses are synchronized in the breaks, the final schedules, and the times that the courses are offered across all these colleges. So all 6,000 undergraduate students use the same portal to register for courses. And if a student has, as an example, a 1:15 afternoon class, that class will end at 2:30, which gives you 15 minutes to get to the next college's campus. And it's usually faster to walk than to drive because we're so compact. We take up about a square mile of space. So there are also some ways that we cross college lines to offer academic programs. All these things are available to you. Most of the clubs and activities that you might want to join are open to you almost no matter which college is sending you to that activity. So whether it's an affinity group, a cultural club, whether it's a music organization, whether it's a community service oriented activity, athletics is the strangest thing in Claremont, where among the 5 colleges, there are 2 rival teams, not one team, not 5 teams. And it's the only place I know of where the away team could dress at home and go a block and a half and play an away game, which actually acts like a home game, even if it's an away game, right? Because everybody's there. So it's all kinds of activities that you can choose. I would also say the most popular intramural sport in Claremont is inner tube water polo. So you should try this out. It's a great way for you to get wet and for you to get your friends wet, more importantly. So then in terms of the whole system, we also share some resources. The main library is something that we all share. We share, in terms of supporting our students, let me put it this way, we want to make sure that we're the first line of approach for a student who needs some extra looking after. So we have within the group, identity centers, affinity centers, we have an office of chaplains, we have a queer resource center, we have also a health and wellness center that is an extra layer of support beyond what each of our colleges is doing in supporting our own students for their health, mental health, as well as physical health. So I can kind of think of this as layers of support that you would expect. And it is not a place where you are likely to feel abandoned, that no one's looking out for you. And that's one of the joys of this Claremont system is you always have this kind of support wherever you go, small classes, so on and so forth, but you can leave your home school behind and in an instant be at another college and be in a whole new construct. And so then to say nothing of the courses that you have. And so you really have the resources of a mid-sized university here. So as I said before, each college wants to set up its own sense of belonging. We work very hard at that. We're going to talk about each of the college's cultures in just a second here. And so I'm going to turn over the microphone, as it were, to Doreen to talk about the founding college in the group, and that is Pomona. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Again, my name is Doreen Toda, I use she, her pronouns, and I'm going to be sharing a little bit about that specific information around Pomona College. So as it was just mentioned, Pomona is that founding member and the largest college within the consortium, or the 5 Cs. We kind of use those interchangeably. And so because we are that founding member, or the oldest sibling in this really unique academic family, Pomona plays a pretty unique role, and it just kind of is really kind of that traditional liberal arts institution. You might hear the term learning for the learning's sake, one way to describe that. And that is really kind of the essence of Pomona College. We might be considered more the generalists, especially in comparison to the other 5 Cs, because we do offer a very large variety in academic interests. And so students who have those very unique subject areas, interests of studies, tend to be attracted to us. So tend to be attracted to the different majors that we offer. And after all, Pomona is renowned for its academics, and students do seek to answer those like big questions during that time on our campus. We see students who enjoy to ponder, engage in research, and want to be change makers, be successful on our campus. We do not just offer a variety in academic interests here on our campus, but we are very intentional about bringing a diverse student body together. And so that diversity includes, again, subject areas, geography, location, socioeconomic status, just to name a few. We really like to think of our campus as kind of a microcosm of the world, and we want to make sure that each student gets to engage with someone who has a different lived experience, because that's really where a lot of that learning, especially outside that classroom, does happen. And so during the first year on campus, Pomona students fulfill their breadth of study requirements, which involves really digging into that liberal arts curriculum. And so that also includes the first year seminar, which is called Critical Inquiry, which helps you develop those like strong writing skills, critical thinking, problem solving techniques, again, very on brand with that true liberal arts education. And so as mentioned earlier, you do have access to that cross registration, and you can take up to 40% of your classes at the other colleges. And so since Pomona, as all the other 5 Cs, is undergraduate only, we do have access to a variety of research opportunities here on our campus. Those can either be self-designed or alongside a professor. And so for one, we have that summer undergraduate research program, aka SERP, which provides kind of that multi-week fellowship opportunity for our students. And that can be either faculty research, or that can also facilitate kind of that student-driven projects. And so either of these kind of have that goal of really broadening a student's engagement, especially over the summer when a lot of students might not or choose not to take classes. Also internship opportunities, of course. We do have our Pomona college internship program. And so those can either happen during the semester or during the summer as well. In either case, both of these programs, so the SERP or this PSIP, as we call it, do offer funding for our students. I think I saw that question earlier, because given that a lot of research or internship opportunities are either not compensated at all or very low compensated, we do want to make sure that students have that ability to apply for funding. So, and that really goes back to that commitment to making higher education as accessible to a diverse group of students as possible, regardless of their ability to fund their education or fund those professional development opportunities. But you do have to apply for that funding and kind of give us a sense of what you're planning on doing, either doing your self-guided research or kind of that internship component. If you need help securing an internship, we have our career development office. Again, that's probably very similar across the 5 Cs, but just keep that in mind. Also, Pomona only offers need-based financial aid, and we're committed to meeting 100% of demonstrated financial need without the use of loans. And so we do ask students in the application process to submit some financial documents, FAFSA, free application for federal student aid, CSS profile. You will get a little bit of information around those similar policies towards the end of this presentation. But I hope this gives you a little bit of an insight of what makes Pomona unique, especially considering that this group of institutions are close together and we all have our similarities, but also our differences as pointed out. And I'm going to be handing it over to Scripps next.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Kyla Fisher, pronouns she, her, hers, and I'll be talking about Scripps. So as the slide says, we were founded in 1926. We were the second Claremont College, founded by Ellen Browning Scripps, who partnered with the founder of Pomona to create this idea of the Claremont Colleges together. But Scripps has a very unique positionality in the Claremont Colleges, being the women's college. While we use the language women's college, we do have a diverse student body, including trans and non-binary students. But really what we mean by calling ourselves a women's college is by making sure that we provide resources, access, and support to everything you can think of in higher education and pre-professional development, with the understanding of the marginality of our students when considering their gender, kind of using the umbrella term of marginalized gender identities, to really make sure that our students are supported both in the classroom and outside of it as they prepare for their future careers and next steps, either continuing their education or just starting to make the world a better place. We first start students on their journey in their first 3 semesters of Scripps in a program we called CORE, which has 3 installments. Students take 1 core class each semester, along with a variety of other courses for other GEs and for their majors and minors. But the purpose of CORE is to introduce students into interdisciplinary learning, which is kind of the crux of the Scripps academic experience. Interdisciplinary is the taking of multiple subjects, concepts, and ideas and seeing how they all intersect with each other. All of the Claremont colleges incorporate interdisciplinary learning into their curriculum, but at Scripps, it's really the foundation of what our educational system is built on. So students are engaging in small discussion groups as well as attending class-wide lectures with a variety of professors from different departments, offered at Scripps in one of our 60 majors, but students are able to get to know one another, get to know professors and a variety of different subjects as they dive into what they want to major in and how they want to spend their college careers academically. Students learn how to use their voice and to understand that their opinions and thoughts are important in the classroom and needed for the understanding of everyone in the room. I always like to say that in a Scripps class, you really have 15 15 professors and not one, because your classmates are just as likely to teach you something as your professor is that day. As students continue their education after finishing core and officially declaring their major, they're also likely doing some internships or research, and 80% of our student body complete at least one internship by the time that they graduate. And really another place that you can see the women's college experience is in our career planning and resources and our LASPA Center for Leadership, which are two pre-professional development offices on campus that are right next to each other, actually right where this picture is, like right off to the right is where those two offices are. And that's where students can have group and individual counseling to build up their leadership skills, learn how to write cover letters and build their resumes and interview. And then we'll also have different workshops and events for students specifically tailored to their gendered experience. So talking about how to negotiate your salary to help bridge the gender pay gap, how to report someone to HR if they make you feel uncomfortable or don't respect your body autonomy. So it's really making sure that students understand the importance that they have in this world and supporting them as they pursue the ways that they want to impact this world. Students then have the book end of their experience with the senior thesis, which most of the Claremont College students will also be completing. But really making sure that students have a tangible way to quantify what they've learned at Scripps and have the full support of their department and their faculty, as well as financial support, to do the work that they want to do to culminate their college experience. Students also study abroad. Just around 60% of our students will study abroad in a variety of different programs in just under 50 countries that we offer. And then a program that I always like to talk about that really focuses on the support of our students and empowerment of our students is our First Generation at Scripps program. It's based in our SCORE building, which is where all of our affinity groups meet. And it's one of the affinity groups specifically tailored to students who are the first person in their family to graduate from college. And it's a 4-year program for students that start with a pre-orientation before classes begin, all the way until they graduate from Scripps. It's also built up by faculty and staff members on Scripps's campus. And to be a part of First Gen, you need to have been a first generation college student during your undergrad experience. So it's very much a for us, by us community on our campus. And one of our IDEA initiatives, which is working on our DEI work to make sure that Scripps is continues to be an inclusive and diverse space that welcomes every kind of person into our community. And I'll turn it over to CMC.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. So before I talk more about Claremont McKenna College, I first have to talk about our history. So we were founded in 1946, shortly after World War II. So that meant that there were a number of young men returning from there were a number of young men who had served our country and were returning home with real world experiences. So this was an amazing opportunity for our founders to establish a liberal arts community, a liberal arts college that would marry these two worlds together. So think about the liberal arts, the humanities, the social sciences, the theory, if you will, with the practice, that real world experience. They wanted to educate students to be thoughtful, productive, and responsible leaders in whatever profession they seek to pursue. Here at CMC, there's a very strong focus on the practical application of what students are learning inside of the classroom. One of our unofficial mottos is learning for the sake of doing, because a lot of what students learn and do always goes back to this question of how can we apply this outside of CMC? At CMC, we also do have 33 majors students can choose from. Some of the most popular majors do include government, economics, international relations, psychology, but we also do have a 3-2 econ engineering program and a philosophy, politics, and economics interdisciplinary major that's modeled after Oxford's own major. But if we go back to our mission for a moment, we want our students to engage in dialogue and discussion inside and outside of the classroom. So you'll find that in our community at CMC, diversity of thought is something we value dearly. We embrace dialogue and discussions, and our classrooms reflect that as well. They are very discussion-based, and there's a big focus on sharing and understanding the viewpoints and perspectives of others. When we think about our curriculum within our undergraduate curriculum, we do ask students to take about 1/3 of their courses within their general education requirements. And then we reserve about 1/3 of their curriculum for their major requirements. And the remaining 1/3 is reserved for elective credits. So this is where at CMC, we say, continue to put that knowledge into practice. And this gives students the opportunity to participate in a couple of different programs that I will talk about in just a bit. But after students have been taking these classes, they've questioned the material, they've reflected, they've learned new things within these classes. We want them to take that knowledge and again, put it into practice. Students have the opportunity to pursue graduate level research with professors through one of our 11 research institutes. So if a student wants to work on redistricting strategies, they can work with the Rose Institute for local and state government. If a student wants to dive into leadership and what does leadership mean to them, they can work with the Kravis Leadership Institute. We also have different centers that focus on entrepreneurship, environmental analysis, and you might be thinking these are amazing research opportunities for social sciences, but we also do have research opportunities available for students who are interested within the natural sciences as well. Typically about 75% of our students will at one point or another have that opportunity and dive into research. Along those lines, another pillar, another way the mission of CMC manifests itself is through our programs, specifically the Washington, D.C. program and the Silicon Valley semester program. Every student at CMC has the opportunity to participate in either of these programs, and they are full-time students. So if they're interning within the Washington, D.C. program, they might be interning with a congresswoman, a senator, working on a campaign on Capitol Hill, working with law firms, nonprofits, a journalist. And if they're within the Silicon Valley program, they might be interning with Google, Tesla, or startup companies. But with both of these programs, they're also taking classes either on the evenings or on the weekend. So within the Silicon Valley, they might be taking a leadership development course along with an economics and finance course. And then within the Washington, D.C. program, they might be taking classes within domestic and foreign policy. So in addition to those two unique domestic programs, we do also have study abroad opportunities that students can pursue. And about 40% of our students will pursue some type of study abroad experience. Additionally, within our career services, it's called the Soul Center on campus. They provide ongoing support for our students. They help students recognize, cultivate, and translate their interests and strengths into meaningful and real world experiences. 95% of our students will have at least one summer internship by the time that they graduate, but it's very common on average for students to graduate with 2 summer internships. And one thing that's amazing with our career services is that at the beginning of each year, they send out a survey to every student asking to check off the boxes of any industry that they're interested in. And so throughout the year, students will be getting emails filled with opportunities within the industries that they selected. And so again, we really want to focus on helping students support and putting that knowledge into practice and thinking about how we can support that as they're navigating their first year in college, but also their second, third, and fourth. Another thing within CMC is that we do have about 46 different countries represented, as you can see, and 45 states represented as well. We have 16% of students are international students and 21% are the first in their family to attend college. Overall, one thing at CMC is, again, thinking about that leadership profile and having a holistic view of leadership. We are definitely looking, again, at the full holistic view of leadership, not just the positions, but also what does the impact look like for each student, because we understand everyone has a different leadership style. And I will pass it on to Peter.
All right, I'm back with you. Harvey Mudd College is really distinct within the Claremont system because we're a STEM-focused institution and we're considered a leader in STEM in this country. So we really have a dual identity, and a rare dual identity, as both a liberal arts and residential college, as well as a STEM institution. So it's what I mean by that is the process of your education is deeply enmeshed with a liberal arts philosophy. That means we want to educate students broadly, and we require all students to take a common core curriculum to make sure they have this breadth. And a byproduct of this core curriculum is that the students learn to work collaboratively. So this is a place that pretty much has an absence of grade competition. To further support that, the first term is in a pass, no credit system. There's also a set of courses that every student at Mudd completes in the humanities and social sciences and the arts, but we don't prescribe which courses those will be. So if I'm asked if we have a foreign language requirement, my snappy answer is yes, Python. But in truth, we don't have one, and we let the student explore a breadth of different areas within courses outside of math and science, and require every student to take just short of a minor in a field that is not math and science. The majors are broad-based, but they all resonate with a concluding exercise in research. So research opportunities will find you quickly at Mudd if you'd like to get engaged early in your career, but you will be required to do either a senior thesis or a signature program that we call clinic, in which the students are assembled in teams of about 5 to solve a live problem for an outside entity that has paid the college about $55,000 and wants return on their investment. So you have a deliverable to make for, who knows, Tesla, Medtronic, MiniMed, some company. The college is particularly close-knit. It's 900 students. We're considered a leader in diversifying STEM education in this country. We're also a leader in the proportion of our graduates that go on to PhD programs in the country. And our graduates, we produce really good problem solvers, and that tends to be reflected in the kind of salaries they command after they graduate. If we go on to the next slide, please, you'll see that there's a strong sense of belonging at our school. Some of that's created by our mission, which is clearly defined and focuses on your impact as a STEM person towards society. We're aligned by the common core curriculum, by being a residential college, also by having an honor code. So this establishes key tenets of responsibility and of conduct, and how you treat your academic responsibilities, how you treat your peers matters a lot to us. It emboldens the faculty to give students take-home exams, as an example. There are 3 courses that students must have completed before they start their first year. So this is not really an admission requirement, it is an enrollment requirement, but in terms of preparing for a rigorous academic experience, all students have to have completed a course each in calculus, in chemistry, and in physics. I want to emphasize a couple of things I've mentioned before. We are extremely mission-driven as an institution, and I cannot exaggerate how collaborative it is. One of our faculty members describes us as the geek Marines, leave no person behind. So that is really the culture of our school. If this resonates with you, please let us know how we can serve you. And with that, I will pass it on to Aaron, and you'll hear next from Pitzer.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. To reintroduce myself, my name is Erin, and I work at Pitzer. I'm an associate director in our office. I'll wrap us up here with the individual college overviews, and then we'll go into kind of some more general details about our application admission processes and answer some of the questions that you've all been putting in the Q&A box. So thank you for all of those. So last of the 5 undergraduate institutions is Pitzer. We are the youngest of this group of 5 here, founded in 1963. As I'm sure you've kind of started to get the sense from all of our colleges, we're very much products of the decades in which we were founded. Pitzer is huge in that regard. We were founded in the 60s amidst the civil rights movement, Vietnam War protests, environmental movement here in California, Chicanx, Latinx movements here in California and the South, university protests, and just kind of a clashing of politics and humanity. And I think Pitzer really embodies a lot of that spirit. We have 5 core values on campus that really distinguish everything that we do. We're very much a liberal arts college, like all of us in the Claremonts, but just with a little extra emphasis on social justice, environmentalism, intercultural and global understanding, et cetera. There are about 40 majors at Pitzer, about 22 different minors. We are big on the social sciences. Some of our most popular programs: political studies, sociology, psychology, neuroscience, but also media studies, human bio, economics, mathematical economics, environmental analysis, all of the above. I mentioned our 5 core values, which really distinguish all that we do. First and foremost is interdisciplinary learning. Self-directed learning and flexible academics are huge at Pitzer. We have very broad academic graduation requirements. Students are encouraged to take a lot of different classes in many different fields in order to graduate. Naturally, many of our majors are interdisciplinary and intentionally built to be as such. So a lot of your courses are going to naturally explore different fields. A lot of your courses will kind of overlap in a variety of subjects. Students double major, combine major, and a handful of our students, about 5%, will self-design majors on campus. This is pretty easy to come by. Students have self-designed classes and majors in secular studies, urban justice studies, feminist public health, performance studies, foreign language education, et cetera. Lots of different courses to take advantage of across the board, lots of different ways to design your curriculum to be exactly what you want it to be. Next up is intercultural understanding. We were really founded as a politically and globally minded institution. A lot of students study abroad. Just over half of our student body will go at some point during their time on campus. And many of our programs are really intentionally going to focus on homestays, on language immersion, on cultural immersion, on some sort of community engagement internship that you'd complete during a semester abroad. A lot of ways to dive in, really immerse yourself in new cultures, and how you do that on campus is equally as important to us. A lot of our classes are very intentionally bringing non-Western thought and perspective into the classroom. Our faculty are equally as engaged and dedicated to our core values as we are. So you'll definitely be challenged to think differently, to unlearn on campus, make sure that we're really tackling learning from various perspectives, multiple sides of the story. Next up, environmental sustainability, probably the most visible core value on Pitzer's campus. We look a lot more like a desert botanical garden than we do a classic liberal arts campus. A lot of cacti, a lot of succulents. We're about 75% drought tolerant native to Southern California species across our campus for landscaping. About 95% of our students live in sustainable housing on campus. Many of our buildings and residence halls are LEED certified. Students lead campaigns to ban plastic straws and water bottles and water initiatives, composting in our student garden, all of the above, to make sure that we're really living our value of being as sustainable as possible and minimizing our impact on our space here in Claremont. We were the first college in Southern California to divest from fossil fuels in the early 2010s. And out of that was founded this new conservancy for us, an environmental research space and facility just off of campus, where students can engage in climate change activism and advocacy projects right here in Southern California. Next up is student engagement. Students are obviously very involved at Pitzer in clubs, activities, athletics, classes, research projects, as well as across the Claremont colleges. But we have a shared governance model on our campus, which means that students sit on every executive committee that we have at Pitzer. They are making decisions about new faculty that we're hiring, about which faculty receive tenure, about our new president starting up this past month, working alongside faculty, staff, administration to make major decisions about what's going on campus. Student voice is huge. We have one of the largest student senates per capita of any liberal arts college in the States. So very much when you think of Pitzer students, you think passion and you think active and you think loud voices. Not everybody has that same experience, but it's very much something that we encourage among our students. And last but not least, social responsibility. I mentioned this in terms of our founding and social justice. Our commitment to social justice and awareness of how we bring that into the classroom and the everyday student experience is really a thread that ties everything together at Pitzer. We commit upwards of 100,000 service hours as a community every year. Partnerships exist through our community engagement center on campus, but students also forge their own partnerships and collaboration with local organizations out in the greater Los Angeles area. One of our academic requirements is a social justice theory, social responsibility praxis course pairing. So students are all required to take a class that dives into a topic of social justice, and that they will pursue a 40-hour internship alongside that coursework to really be out in the community, working alongside women's empowerment and rehabilitation centers, community gardens, organic farming efforts in food deserts here in Southern California, immigration reform efforts, working with juvenile justice centers on written expression and slam poetry, whatever it may be. Values, Pitzer, kind of all of the things. There's a lot of information I just threw at you, but I'm going to wrap it up there so that we can get into some more general Q&A. So thanks everybody for sitting through our presentations. I know there've been a ton of questions in the chat Q&A box so far about the Claremont Colleges, about all of us, about what sets us apart, kind of what makes us distinctive. Obviously, Peter gave us a great overview of the Claremonts, and we all just gave you a nice overview of each of our institutions. So I hope that helped answer some of those questions. Before we get into some of the general questions, just to touch on admission practices, application details, we just have a couple slides here with some more details regarding our specific processes. I know that there were a couple questions about like applying to one school or applying to another school, an early decision here, early decision there. As I think Jachi responded to one, as we said, we are all separate colleges. So though we share this system in this consortium and we have shared athletic programs and clubs and activities, and you can take classes on every campus, when you apply to Pitzer, it's as if, you know, Pitzer and Pomona, it's as if you're applying to Pitzer and UC Berkeley or a college across the country. We're totally different. We don't share that information, but we do have some practices that are the same. So on this slide, that kind of helps to summarize, we are all on the common application. I know I responded to a question about that earlier. Some of us have additional apps, which we'll get to on the next slide. We all employ a holistic review in our application process. That means that we're really taking into account every piece of your application, context, as well as, you know, background info of who you are, where you're coming from, your school, all what you bring academically, as well as personally, as well as extracurricularly, all of the above. We have supplemental pieces required on our application. We all meet 100% of demonstrated financial need. That's a really important takeaway. We do all have early decision and regular decision processes and options, no early action, and lots of ways to connect with us. Obviously, this presentation being one of them. If you want to go to the next slide, as I mentioned, we are separate institutions. So though we do share things like the common application, along with many other schools, we also have distinctive programs on each of our campuses, different ways that we pursue and handle our admission processes. This is a nice summary of that. I can definitely let people ask more questions about this in the Q&A box. And if you have questions for specific institutions, definitely take advantage of the Q&A. But some of us will be QuestBridge partners and institutions. Some of us also have the coalition application alongside the Common App. Interviews, I know somebody asked about interviews and applying early decision. Some of us offer interviews, some of us do not. Some of us do take demonstrated interest, kind of how much you've connected with an institution or kind of what you've taken advantage of from virtual or on-campus programs. Some of us don't take that into consideration. A couple other things, testing policies. I think this doesn't quite touch on that, but I know Pitzer says test free. All of the Claremonts right now are test optional. Scripps is permanently test optional. Pitzer is test free, so we do not accept them at all. And Pomona, Harvey Mudd, and CMC are all still conditionally, temporarily, maybe indefinitely test optional for several years. So definitely follow up kind of as your application season comes up if anything has changed, but just to touch on that. And I think that's all I'm gonna say. But if anyone feels super inclined to pop in to add anything else about our admission processes, please do. Otherwise, we can kind of dive into some of these questions that we wanted to answer in the Q&A session.
I think you should lead us through that, Erin.
I can't wait. All right, let's see. I think, well, there's so many good questions. Obviously, like first that I see on this list is how do I decide which Claremont College is the best fit for me? I'm sure we can all touch on this, but I know we all just shared several elements of what makes each of our campuses really distinctive and special, though we are all liberal arts colleges and share this really amazing central resource that is the consortium. We each have different missions, different academic requirements, different values on campus, different focuses, various specialties that really set us apart. And I think when you're doing your college research, finding that school that really aligns with your personal values and what you're excited to study is really my best advice in terms of exploring fit in a college, which I know can be kind of confusing at first, but is not underrated.
If I can interject, I'll add another dimension to this. Aside from what you want to study, which obviously is something that you'd consider, think about the people that you're surrounded by and how those people might help you grow and challenge you. It's going to be a completely different environment from wherever home is. And so your willingness to explore that growth, to change, is going to be a big part of that fit. And so that's part of an answer to the application process. You want to communicate that willingness to embrace the way the college is organized and the way they perceive themselves and what their values are. But in terms of finding the best place for you, you should, if I can invite you to do sort of a personal inventory of the things that really matter to you, and then align those with the colleges and have them come to you.
Love that, Peter. Thank you. I'm going to throw another question out there for the group, which I realize is something we've been talking about for years and will continue to talk about since it's all relatively new. But a student who asked, how will the Claremont Colleges maintain their commitment to diversity given the recent Supreme Court decision? I think that's something we definitely all have been talking about a lot and feel pretty passionately about. I'll let any of my colleagues jump in if anyone wants to touch on that.
I'm being hijacked by one of my cats in the background, so apologies if there's a little bit of an unruly noise. But I think, first of all, this is all new to us, but we will all abide by the Supreme Court ruling, right? This is the law. This is something that we will all have to obey by. However, I think, speaking for all five colleges here, that we still remain very much dedicated to that diversity and equity goal kind of across our different campuses, because especially for Pomona, again, it is very much part of that mission and a value that we all share. And so we as an admissions office just have to find different tactics on recruiting students, on obviously reviewing the applications, but nonetheless, it is still something that we like to see. But again, it is not something that we're able to consider in the admissions process anymore.
And also to add to that, I think something important is that it's very much about the admissions process and has nothing to do with the student experience. So any of our affinity groups, any of the events that we organize, anything that celebrates diversity or acknowledges discrimination are all intact. Nothing has been jeopardized because of the Supreme Court. It's just, how do we admit our students is the only thing different, and none of our colleges use systems that disadvantage any racial groups or any groups of people. So that's not something any of our policies have to adjust to, really just making sure the language that we use and the things that we have to document are according to the law. But in terms of the ethos of all of our offices and how we function, that isn't going to change how we do things.
Thanks all. I'll move into another question. I think there's a couple on here that I'm just going to combine, and hopefully that like kind of makes sense. But somebody asked about kind of attending the Claremonts and how that would differ from attending a larger national or state university like UCLA, UC Berkeley. And someone else was asking more about kind of the liberal arts experience and translating your time in undergrad liberal arts into a professional field and skills gained there. Though not exactly the same, I just kind of want to combine those of kind of the benefit of a liberal arts education, the benefit of coming to a small school like one of the Claremonts, if anyone wants to jump in on some thoughts about that.
I have strong feelings about this, so I'm going to take the lead. I think this kind of an education sets you up for a lifetime of progressions, making you adaptable, flexible to work as technology changes, as societal movements occur. You have this flexibility. And the main thing that we offer you is ability to solve problems and to learn really, really well, learn across various branches. It is, I'd also say that liberal arts colleges have a completely different mission than a Research One institution. We are here to support undergraduate education exclusively. We want you to have the very best experience in your undergraduate years as you possibly can. Whereas a Research One institution, if I'm a professor at some Research One institution, if I don't produce research, I'm toast. And so my emphasis is making sure I have graduate students that I'm being funded by maybe National Science Foundation to make sure these students are getting, helping me be productive in my labs. So it's a completely different model, right? So there's just a value system difference there. In terms of how that translates professionally, it's that adaptability can play out for a long term in really substantial ways. We're already discovering just this last year how AI has changed the way the tech industry and what kind of jobs are available, people being laid off, and you have to adapt. If you're a really good learner, you can probably adapt to that. Maybe you have some bumps along the road, but you're not left without any kind of a life vest in the middle of an ocean. And that's, I think, the real strength of this approach toward education. Plus, you're going to make very strong relationships at a residential college like this. And those relationships can offer you that lifeline when you need it.
Thanks, Peter. I feel like that sums it up really well, so I won't make anyone else contribute, but if anyone wants to, you're welcome to pipe in. I feel like there's definitely a couple other like combined questions I'd like to ask. We have a few minutes, so I'm hopeful we can do this. I see one near the top just about funded research and internship opportunities. And I know there were some questions about kind of post-grad, like obviously like the one that Peter was just answering about kind of moving into a professional field with a liberal arts degree, career services on campus, funding opportunities. Obviously, we all have different programs, different internship funding, different research opportunities on each of our campuses. But just in a more general sense, if anyone wants to jump in about kind of what those look like on campus, how career services kind of generally works, and some shared resources there, what opportunities are available for students to take advantage of. I can also do it if no one wants to jump in. I'll get us started. In terms of career services across the campuses, we each do have our own career services offices. So great resources for just general advising, development, post-grad help. So many resources, grad school advising, internship finders, job shadowing programs, field trips, big career fairs that we host on campus. One of those kind of underrated benefits of the Claremonts is that we can also share some of those resources. So career fairs at Harvey Mudd, at CMC, students from all 5 campuses can take advantage of visiting recruiters and companies visiting for a lot of those. So great resources there. In terms of funding for research, for internships, this exists in a number of ways. We have paid research assistant positions on campus for students as well as unpaid positions, but plenty of opportunities for research to be a job that you pursue. For internships, there's often programs specific to each of our campuses that fund students to pursue internships. So whether that's during the year or over the summer, we have resources and grants and funding that you can either just get or apply for. Often they can be competitive, but is available for all students. So you can apply for research grants for the summer. You can apply for internship stipends for unpaid or underpaid internships that you're pursuing over the summer. So like I said, though we all have different programs for research, different programs for internship, different funding resources and kind of sources, you can really take advantage of that as a student in so many ways across your entire time on campus.
And this is where developing a relationship with a professor, which we're all about, can really pay off for you.
All very true. I wanted to have one more question just about kind of like residential life and like off-campus life and exploration, since I know I saw a lot of questions about like, do we have to live on campus, or if I'm coming locally, do I commute? If anyone wants to touch base just a little bit about like the residential experience and kind of how pivotal that is to the Claremont life, as well as maybe life in Claremont or Southern California, and some things off campus that students like to participate in. Maybe that could be our wrap up to make sure we get everybody out of here on time.
I take half of that. As someone who's still fairly new to Southern California myself, I would love to hear some tips and tricks what to do. But kind of at the core of that liberal arts education is really that residential component. And so all 5 colleges have that built into it. And so housing is guaranteed. We want students to be on campus, to really engage with each other, to learn from each other, to really build that tight-knit community. And so yes, it is very, very uncommon for students to commute, to live off campus. Of course, there are exceptions, but if you're not drawn to that kind of residential component as part of your undergraduate experience, this might not be the fit, because again, it goes really back to that liberal arts education, that learning happens outside the classroom as much as it does inside the classroom. Would love to hand it off to someone who has a little bit more experience with Southern California. If you're into the outdoors, it's beautiful. Usually, if it's not too hot, you can definitely spend time outside. But again, it can get quite warm as well, especially during the summertime.
I can add a little bit. I am a Southern California native, but I'm still learning a lot about Southern California. But what's I've been hearing a lot from our students is that we are in a unique location where, if you're familiar with LA traffic, you know that it's a real thing. So technically we might be 30, 45 miles outside of LA, but in traffic, that might be more closer to like an hour plus. But what's really cool about CMC or Claremont, or not CMC, I'm so sorry, Claremont Colleges within Claremont, California, is that there is a metro station walking distance. I think it's about 15-20 minutes, which is located in the Village, which is referred to as downtown Claremont, available for all students, and that takes you directly into downtown LA. And so you don't need to have a vehicle to be able to go explore LA, because it is relatively close or nearby. For a lot of students, especially at a lot of our colleges, there are also outdoor clubs and organizations that students participate, and they take advantage of going hiking, surfing, snowboarding, and most of those experiences are paid by the institution because it is a club sponsored event. And so that is another amazing opportunity given our location. And I think that is all I have to share within that.
Thanks for wrapping us up, Stephanie. Sorry to cut us a little, not short, I guess, but it always feels that way. Sorry to cut us off, guys, but I know we're at our hour, so I'm gonna call it so that we can let everyone get on with their evenings and or various times of day, depending on where you're tuning in from. I know there's a lot of unanswered questions, so please do not hesitate to email any one of us and our offices. You can find plenty of our contact information online on our various websites. Glad to be in touch with any more questions, either institution specific or 5 college wide, that you might still want answered. And as always, just continue to connect with us. A recording of this presentation will be sent to all attendees, so you can definitely reference back later on if need be. And thank you all so much for joining us. This was a real treat, and I hope you learned a lot.